Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And this is another continuation of the segment and sequence of non-duality and manifestation and how your reality is constructed by your awareness, impacted and modified by the secondary mind. And so I want to talk about the differentiation between Christ and the imagination. I want to talk a little bit about the reality as opposed to the Western world, which is that we have 7 billion different consciousnesses. We actually have one consciousness, which is God. And that consciousness itself is shared by all. And as opposed to 7 billion realities, where we are experiencing all things and all these realities, right? I'll teach you what quantum physics says about this and about how by the end, you will know that there is only one reality and the rest is in potential, and that you will be held within the construct of this screen of space and ultimately what you can do to modify your reality, and how this understanding, this true understanding of the nature of consciousness and the formula of manifesting will get you your manifestations faster than if you start to reference time. So before we begin, hit the like button. It does something to the algorithm so that those who wouldn't normally be able to see this video will be able to see it. Hit the subscribe button if you want more broken down, explained, and examined systematic tests over the span of 13 years, tens of thousands of manifestations, segmented experiences from myself, and hundreds of thousands of manifestation experiences tracked down, dissected, categorized, filtered, sieved down, boiled down, and purified, and extracted into the perfect way to manifest your reality in a predictable way. Hit the bell icon if you want to stay notified for these videos that come out Tuesdays and Fridays. And let us jump right into it then. So I want to talk to you about the concept of beliefs. And if, for whatever reason, time was a belief. So again, let's go back to this process of awareness and non-duality. Non-duality is a sort of, it's a way of understanding the world. And it's what the Bible is based on. It's what Neville's based on. And you have to understand that anything that exists as a thought or belief or feeling or emotion is not God itself, right? That is something that can be impressed and control the events on the screen. It can push the experiences to happen. Anything within the screen can be modified and changed, okay? That is important because the thought that time is a belief, that is not a belief. Time is something that doesn't need to be recognized ever. You don't even experience time. Take an example now of when you are fully immersed in something. You know this. You know what I'm talking about. I don't care what you say. Think back to an experience where time flew, right? However, when you look, if you were to time it and we're not aware of it, the time would still pass the same way, right? Time is not being experienced. It's something that is used to describe. Super important. Forget the word construct, that can be confusing. Time is a description to describe a duration of events that happen, or a discrepancy between this now and the other now that I experienced, which is really, really critical if we are to kind of get to this idea of how how time is not a belief. So ultimately, say it was, right? Say it was. So back, I don't know, years ago, there was this, when I learned how to easily change beliefs, probably about, 4 or 5 years ago, essentially what happened was I came to this amazing realization that I hadn't felt important. And so I sat there and I wrote a single list. This is before the list method thing came about, right? This is before I invented the testing mechanism with lists. But essentially what happened was I wrote down one statement one time, and I wrote down, I am important. And what happened was I went to the coffee shop the next morning and the barista said to me, you look really important. And I was shocked. And what happened then was a slew of events began to unfold naturally without me. I wrote that thing down and forgot about it completely. And it began to unfold, and not immediately, but through a bridge of experiences, I changed into a person who thought, believed, and knew I was important. It happened automatically. So this blew my mind, and I began to experiment. I listed down things that I knew was wrong with me, and I wrote them down in a way which were how I wanted them to be. And what I saw was miraculous. Each and every one of those things, those negative things, stopped happening, right? Fears, jealousies, things like this. I wrote down, I am confident, I am secure. Things that were very obviously glaring at the time that had made me suffer for years. Things related to my addiction. All I did was I essentially wrote down statements, did nothing else, didn't think of anything else, didn't feel anything else, and then they happened. But what happened was I didn't force them into my mind. I didn't feed them into my mind. I didn't jam them into my mind through repetition. It was the act of imagining. That writing down is the act of imagining in a slow motion way. And that impressed the subconscious, and then just as any other manifestation, a bridge of incidents unfolded, and that led me to that belief, to having that belief. So I realized, like, holy crap, this is how to change beliefs. This is the holy grail. This is what's not taught anywhere. So essentially what happened was, right, and again, think of me in a life or death experience still. Things were getting better, but I needed to change my beliefs. This was critical. And so essentially what happened was I said, okay, how do I figure out my beliefs, right? So I knew that the reality was all mine. I created the whole thing. And so if I hadn't imagined what's experienced, then they must come from somewhere else, which is belief. So I looked at the world and I began to generalize in a generalized phrase, what I was experiencing. Like, people treat me, or women always change their mind, right? These are just statements that I would experience objectively, right? The word belief is often misconstrued. So in other words, just think of assumptions that you have about the world. That's the best way to describe it. And I made an exhaustive list. I'm talking about, if you were in my VIP program, then you know how deep I went into this. From all categories of my life, health, wealth, love, happiness, and spirituality. From the moment that I did it, going all the way back to the beginning of my life, I wrote down every single thing that caused me resentment, caused me fear, caused a bad memory, or that I caused pain or resentment. Every single experience, I wrote it down. I wrote down who was involved, and I wrote down how it affected me. And essentially, what I found out through listing these things, I mean, there were hundreds of things, a few hundred things that I was able to come up with. I determined that after the first 15 or 20, they all have the same pattern. So nevertheless, I wrote down the general nature of each of these things. And then I systematically wrote the opposite of them. I assumed that those had to be the beliefs that were creating these things. And then I assumed that just like the other manifestations that I had wrote down these statements in the positive tense, and it removed all these negative things, they never happened again. In the same nature as that, I systematically removed and replaced every negative belief in my life with a positive one. And amazingly enough, I didn't imagine anything. I didn't feel anything. And also, there were many people in the VIP program who did this along with me and experienced it as well. This is how so if you've ever heard of this way of beliefs and creating beliefs, this was something I created through a bridge of incidents about 5 years ago that's caught on in a great way because it works very well. You will find extreme results. If you're looking for crazy results in your life, talking about romance, your relationships, your money, your health, your mental health, you construct beliefs, these generalized assumptions of how the world works. Could be anything. Could be like, people act this way, money comes to me this way, women treat me this way, and boom, they will happen. But not only that, it made me learn that it canceled out the thing that it was opposing. This was how instant it was to change a belief. And there were dozens of people that instantly were able to prove this as well. So what it came down to was that beliefs or assumptions are stored in the mind as a ledger. They're a list of statements. This is what I came up with because this was literally the solution, writing an opposing thing. And what we learned was writing down an opposite thing instantly changes. Well, when I say instantly, it instantly impresses. Then the bridge unfolds and you will become a person who not only has the new belief, but the old one that you're opposing is canceled out. Now, if there's not a direct opposite, you create numerous ones that would oppose it together. That works just the same. And there became the master way, the inventory I call it, to construct your reality exactly the way that you want and manifest automatically. And this will happen for those of you who have changed your beliefs through this method, which there are many of you. Go ahead and write this below. So the reason I bring this up is because if time were a belief, your concept of time, right? All you have to do, the same way as imagining something is so simple and it happens automatically, you write down that belief in a positive tense and it changes the negative one to the new one. And all you have to do is write something down about time. Now, I think people, when they hear me, they automatically have a preconceived decision made that I just don't know what I'm talking about and that I likely haven't thought of this angle. Trust you me, if it's out there, I've heard it. I've been coaching people directly for years, and I have obsessively been studying not only manifestation, but also quantum physics, math, probability, logic. Why do you think I come up with these systems that I have? I filter them through the modality of mathematics, physics, science, probability, etc., and come up with formulas that work for everyone. So, if you had not already concluded and understood that Neville is not teaching that the human mind and ego is God, that he is not teaching that there are infinite coexisting realities now, that they're in potential, that can be created now, but the world must compel itself through a bridge of incidents to experience it, well, then simply change your beliefs surrounding time, as I've tried many times before, and watch that you will not skip dimensions or realities. There are many times that you will instantly manifest things, and there will be times where you, as you can watch any of the people in the comments below, they also will manifest two things. They imagine it at the same time, but they manifest at different times completely. Some of them, they manifest instantly, and the second one will take a year or two. Time, as it says in the Bible, is not a factor to be decided. It is constructed through a series of events that it takes to compel one person to become another person. For Mother Teresa to become a killer, she's going to have to undergo some crazy stuff that's not going to instantly be experienced, most likely, instantaneously. Now, the reason I say that is not to set a law of how this is going to work. It's a generalization of observation, right? Of looking at not one manifestation. Now, imagine the one that you've had, the 5 that you've had, and you've been logging these things. Imagine that in the thousands, the tens of thousands, and having an open mind, a mathematics mind, and coming up with these conclusions. This is the angle that I come from. I want to give you another thing about the mystical experience of Neville controlling time. So, there is, without going into too much of the discrepancies from the beginning to the end of Neville's career, I will talk about how he goes from the idea of more or less the singular mind of God to the consciousness of God. And this is how I started too. I thought that my person, my mind was God, and I was wondering why I couldn't manifest things instantly. Why wasn't this girl becoming the person I wanted instantly, right? And it was just because I had it flipped upside down. It's one God, one awareness that is shared between all, that communicates with every single mind to compel that mind and body to do its will. And we push our desires into that shared awareness, and each of us is acting on a part, perfect in accordance with our desires. So not only are you influencing everyone in the world in your experience, but once you are in their experience, they're influencing you as well. Now remember, I'm saying experience, not reality. This is very important. If you go back and watch my videos, there may be times where I've erred and said realities, but most of the time you will hear me say very specific strategic words that are often misconceived for something else. So, but anyway, I'm referring back to Neville's lecture, and I respond to this as a comment that I received on my previous video about time, and how Neville had a mystical experience and stated that he can control time with his mind. So first I want to tell you, however, my mystical experience. So what happened was I was sleeping, and then suddenly I was awoke. But I was awoke where I was awake, laying on the bed, fully awake, but I was also in the dream. But it wasn't a dream, it was something strange. It was mystical, I could tell. And so what happened was this vision, this awareness was automatically scaling a countryscape, kind of a mountainscape, kind of like from a valley, I was observing back and forth, and there were mountains, a mountain range in front of me, all green, so it was all grass. There were no mountains or anything like that. I was in a valley, probably low mountains, but anyway, it was all black and gray. It was, so I'm going to tell you the exact experience. Then I'm going to tell you how I interpreted it, why I interpreted it, how it relates to Neville's, and what Neville intended. So having experienced this, I'm awake on my bed. I'm kind of jittery at the same time as my awareness, uncontrollably, mind you, is scanning. And at once, I flex, so to speak. And in flexing, my body tightened up really tense, and it was vibrating. When I say vibrating, I'm not just saying like a little jittery. I'm talking about it was shaking so bad. It was almost as if I was having a seizure. And this is reality. This is real. This is not in the dream. I'm on the bed, shaking, and what was happening was, this is the feeling that I could get in the dream, in the experience, was that my flexing of it, when I did that, my focus stopped dead center on this mountain range, and it turned into color. It became lively. It could be experienced. And then when I let go of my flexing, my body was able to rest, and the vision started going to and fro again. And it happened again, stopping, animated, and let go, relax, it turned gray, back and forth. So when I got up, which was immediately after, because it was totally crazy, totally insane, I got up, I wrote it down, and I automatically thought, like, oh my God, I just controlled time, like Neville did. Now, notice how I based my interpretation off of Neville's, and I made a video right after it happened, and I posted it on my channel, and I told people when it happened, when I had that mystical experience. Now, what really happened in Neville's vision as well was something very similar. He said with his mind, he was able to stop time immediately. Things were stopped in midair, etc. And then when he became alert and aware, his interpretation was that he controlled time. So naturally, because I experienced the promise, I thought that what I experienced was controlling time as well. I had two mystical experiences, almost identical to the way Neville did. One before I ever heard of Neville's, when I had the promise. And then this one was after, so I interpreted it a different way. Even the way I interpreted the promise was completely different than the way I do now. I wouldn't say the promise. I would say when the lightning struck inside my mind, or when the thunderbolt happened in my mind. That's how I described it back then. But the point being is, this was in a time, Neville had that, I forget when he had that mystical experience, far before, but this was at a time when he taught people, if you became Christ-like, you can control time. Really, however, the truth of what he's saying is I believe more in tune with what the origin of his teachings are, which is non-duality, which essentially is that your awareness itself is the core reason and only reason that reality exists. And without your awareness, reality fades away. So the same way as in my mystical experience, I was able to control reality animating. That's what's also happening when we imagine. That's what's also happening when we're being moved to a manifestation. That is in non-duality's basic principle that awareness itself falls asleep, enters into its mind as a person, and looks around in the sky of the universe in order to look inside his own mind. That is, and people misconceive that as this world is a dream. No, it's like a dream. It's not a dream, it's like a dream. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please hit the like button. It does something to the algorithm so that those who wouldn't normally be able to see this video will be able to see it. Make sure you check out my social media, all of them. I do release content now on Instagram, on TikTok, and all this stuff, starting to anyway. So make sure you get on that right now. Hit the subscribe button for broken down techniques, methods, tested, systematically tested to manifest as a lifestyle, not as a tool to implement into a fictitious world, but to flip that on its head and make manifestation the core and center of your reality, which it is anyway. And also then the bell icon, and stay tuned for more. Thank you so much for watching.